Welcome to the Christian Call Center where Jesus is on the main line and we're on line 2.
We have made it to the end of the courtship series. Today is all about the championship game. You made it through every single step: scouting, drafting, tryouts, the playoffs. And if you haven't, what are you doing listening to this episode? Go back and listen to the others. No spoilers.
Seriously, we do thank you guys for joining us on this series. It has been a long time coming. It started out as a summer series and now we kind of dragged it into fall, but we have reached the final episode and we are absolutely excited to close this series out with one of the most God-fearing couples that we know, Sylvester and Melissa Crawford.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Thank you for joining us.
absolutely. Look, pinch punch.
For those of you who may recognize Brother Sylvester from one of our earlier episodes, we're thankful that he's able to come back to us. And Sister Melissa, welcome for the first time.
Yes, glad to be here.
I know you mentioned earlier, Sister Melissa, that you listened to last episode with Pastor Ryan and Sister Britt. Have y'all been listening to all the episodes in the series?
So I haven't listened to all of them. I listened to both the one that Pastor Ryan did. I listened to y'all's first one with the series. I guess that would be the scouting, the first one that went from a summer. And then I listened to the one with Pastor Ryan by himself. And then the one with both he and Lady Britt.
Okay. So you guys pretty much kind of have an idea of like where we were kind of going with the episodes and the point of us doing this series.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right. So for those of you listeners who have made it this far, you should know that this is all about the end of the courtship journey. And hopefully you're all ready for marriage.
Yes.
But seriously, so we brought the Crawfords here to discuss their own journeys, seeing as they've obviously been successful thus far. So I don't know which one of you wants to start. Just like a short summary of y'all journey as a couple. Share it with the listeners.
All right. You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I guess. So we've been married now for 23 years, and we met a long time ago. So the journey. I mean, I can go back as far as you want me to go, but we met when we were 17. We were actually getting ready to go to college when we met. We were 17. This was in March of 1996. And I can remember like everything pretty close, pretty good. Because when we met, it was March 1996. I was working on my term paper, right? I was last minute doing that, but I'm glad I was. And Melissa, she was working on a paper. I don't think it was a term paper, but it was. So she was working on a paper too. And so now here's the thing. When we first met, when I walked into the library, it's the UNO library in New Orleans. When I walked into the library, I saw her and her friend on a computer doing some work. And when I first saw them, I'm like, oh, they look like college students. I went ahead and sat down and started doing my work. That was my first time ever going into that library. First time ever. Now, it was probably maybe about 3 miles from my house, but that was my first time ever going into the University of New Orleans library. And that was her first time as well. So I get there, I'm doing my paper, doing my work, and at around 7 o'clock. Now you may ask me, man, how you remember the date? I don't know. I mean, the time, I just do. But at like 7 o'clock, Melissa came and she had a bunch of books in her hand. And she like let them drop extremely loud in the library, right?
No.
So you're in the library. Why are you letting books drop so loud? So in my mind, that was to get my attention.
Oh gosh.
I feel like Sister Melissa got a whole different story for this.
Oh,
But I'm gonna let you
I
continue.
have the right version.
Because listen, watch this though. Watch this. So when all the books dropped, I looked up and she looked at me and she smiled.
I always smile though.
No.
Yes, I do.
And so what I did, I looked at the time and I'm like, okay, it's like 7 o'clock and we have until 10 o'clock. So I think I got some time we can talk for a while. So I that's how I knew what time it was, because I looked at the time. I'm like, okay, we got 3 hours here, so I'm gonna let her kind of go from there. But that's when we first met, right? I will say this though, just to get to some of the other material. That was our first time ever going into that library, and we have never gone back since that day. It's like the Lord knew that
Yes.
at that time, at that moment, I need you to go work on your paper. I need you to work on your paper, and now y'all gonna meet at this library.
That's it.
And that's it.
And you know what? That that thought and that statement reminded me of one of our earlier episodes. I think this was around like the scouting episode that I was talking about. Like, you have to be put in the position for these things to happen, because as you stated, like, that was your first and last time ever being in the library, but it was intentional and was for a purpose. But you have to be willing to do that, because you could have, like you said, easily changed your mind. You could have said, oh, I don't need to be in here, you know what I mean? But because like God ordained the path for you both, it had to happen, and had to happen the way it did, even if she did drop them books really loud,
You're right.
Now about the books, okay. So most of what Sylvester said was correct. However, I was taking AP psychology, and so I had to go to the library to use the journals, because in high schools they didn't have like big journals that you could use. And y'all have seen scientific journals, right? They are like huge books.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to make several trips. So I literally had about 8 of those huge 2-inch thick journals, so much so my arms were straight, like locked in, and I had the books propped up on my chest. And so to set 8 huge journals down, they're gonna fall. They're just gonna fall. But I did smile at him though. I did smile at him, because he looked up at me and kind of chuckled when he saw me drop the books. So we just,
that's what I was getting ready to ask. Like, was it one of those like embarrassing looks kind of thing? Like, like somebody noticed you doing that, so you kind of like try to laugh it off, even though like you're embarrassed about it.
Exactly. It was more of that. It was more of that. But fast forward later on in the evening, so my best friend was with me, and then I left them and I went to go get some more journals. And when I came back, they were in a full-on conversation. And I'm like, oh, okay. They talking. So I join in and we just start talking. What school you go to? I go to this school. He went to McDonald 35. I went to McMain. And the funny part was, he used to give, this was before we weren't saved then either. So he used to give parties. Like, he had the happening parties in New Orleans. They were at this place called St. Mark's. Everybody went to the St. Mark's parties. Right. So he throw these parties, and they kind of be like after parties for a lot of the school dances. I had gone to a couple of the St. Mark's parties, but we never crossed paths. We had mutual friends. Like, it was so crazy. Like, I just don't know how I never ran into you, but we met there. And so as I began to talk to him, we started talking about like prom, and he didn't have a date and I didn't have a date. And I was like, well, I wouldn't want to go with anybody that I didn't know anyway. I had to at least know him for like 2 months. So Sylvester says that I was trying to throw hints, because it was in March, prom was in May, which I wasn't. I wasn't trying to throw hints. But, from there, the rest is history. And to come to find out behind the scenes, my girl was like, so you gonna get my girl number when I stepped away again? And he was like, Sylvester was like, no. And she was like, so you just, I don't know how I know the play-by-play. It's so vivid. Right. She was like, so you just meet pretty girls in places and you don't get their number?
I said yes.
And he said yes.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So, but I didn't know all this. So when we left, me and my friend left, and at this point we thought he was gone. Why this boy jumps from behind a pole, scared the living daylights out of us.
And you know I didn't jump.
You jumped. You came out so quick. I was like, what startled us? He jumps from behind the pole as we were leaving, and he had a business card, y'all. Now, we're 12th grader, first of all. Has a business card. Let's talk about that part.
What was on the business card?
So his name and his phone number. Like he produced it.
Stop
yes.
it.
This man was professional.
He was very professional. He gave me his business card. And I did not call him the next day. Like in his mind is a little foggy. He thinks I called him the next day. I did not. It was about a couple days, and I called him.
It was not.
And it was a couple days. And the rest is history. You know, that from the first conversation, it was like, man,
yeah,
you kind of cool, you know?
Yeah, we stay on the phone all night.
Fell asleep on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
His mom would be like, baby, I'm gonna need y'all not to top my line. Like y'all on the phone too. And then you got your own, you had your own line. He got his own line too.
Oh,
you know, that was back in the day.
Pre-cell phone.
That was pre-cell phone. That was pre-cell phone, pre-everything.
All I had was a pager, and she would text, well, beat me or whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. She would beat me 911. Then I call him like, wait, what's going on? And it wasn't nothing. She just wanted to talk. I'm like, I had to take my last 25 cents to put in this payphone.
Everything was 911.
And you want to say, hey, wait,
but what? You did it though. That's the thing.
I sure did. We're gonna talk to the operator, pop on, and tell him I got a minute left.
Yes. Yes. But it was, you know, it was one of those things where I will say, even though we weren't really. Now I'll backtrack and say Sylvester's best friend was apostolic, and he was in the process of witnessing to him, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so he was just beginning to get into the Lord, but he still was going to his family church. Mm-hmm. But I was raised Catholic, and so, you know, I didn't know anything about, you know, the apostolic faith or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so for us, you know, coming together, we kind of grew in this together. And so his friend actually started just witnessing to both of us at the same time, in a sense, right? And when we both knew we were coming out here, it just made sense. And we dated, and we could talk a little bit more about it, but I want to make that distinction because, you know, there's a big difference in how we courted, I guess, and dated before Christ, BC, mm-hmm. for that brief moment, and then how we did after.
So I did want to talk a little bit about that. Before you guys kind of started this relationship, or, you know, started talking to each other, were you guys dating beforehand?
Yes.
Yes,
we were.
Why was that a little chuckle?
So there was this guy but never, like, we weren't serious. Serious, but he might have been serious about me, but I wasn't like, this is somebody I could spend, you know, the rest of my life with. But there was this guy, we were not officially like boyfriend and girlfriend, but we did go on dates. Like, we went to a few football games. He was actually from Baton Rouge, actually. So we, you know, went to a few football games. He would come to New Orleans, take me out on a date, you know, in New Orleans or whatnot. But when I met Sylvester, it was like, that was a wrap. Like, immediately, you know, he just, I don't know. It was something he was just different. For me, you know, growing up, I always had some sort of companion, which I don't recommend that. I recommend people have some time where you spending alone, you know, and by yourself. Mm-hmm. You always need to be booed up with people. But, you know, of course, I'm young, I'm middle school, mm-hmm. whatever, high school. And so, but with all of those guys, they were, how do I say, they just would do anything to try to make me happy, or they never really like challenged me on things, or, you know what I'm saying? It was just like a pushover in some ways, right? Because I had a very strong personality, very dominant personality. And that's something we'll talk about later too, that I had to like really look at how to navigate that, right? Being married and so forth. But Sylvester was the first guy who literally, I'll never forget. And before I got saved, I used to, cuss a lot, like a lot, really worse than guys. And I'll never forget, we were on the phone and he said, do you always cuss that much like that? I was like, yeah, like what's up with it? What's wrong with it? And he did it so smooth. He's just always so smooth and so wise. I was like, what, you don't? And he was like, no. And it was just the way in which he did it. It wasn't like he was trying to, like change me, but he really made me think about, well, why do I do that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I want to interject.
Yeah, interject.
So I did say no, but another part to that, I said I don't around ladies.
Yes, you sure did.
Okay.
Because I did, right? But I said I don't around ladies.
That's right.
And for her to be cussing the way she did, and I'm respecting her enough not to cuss around her, it was
Yeah.
You felt that there needed to be a mutual understanding.
Yeah, that was a moment.
Okay.
And since then, he has been that person who he has a way of saying things in such a way, and he packages it in such a way that you just can't help but to receive it, right? Because it's not, it's not anything to kind of tear you down, but he'll say it in a way to make you think, like, man, I never thought about it like that. You just want to do better. You just do. You just want to do better. And so that for the first time, I had somebody that would say, okay, you might want to think about that or whatever. Whereas in the past, I didn't have, none of the guys that I was in relationships with challenged me in that way. If that makes
sense. And so, because I'm trying to connect all of the pieces that we kind of went through in all the episodes together as we, come to a close in this one. So based on what you were saying, like you had those experiences with other guys and there were things in those relationships, friendships that were kind of missing to what you felt could be something that was long-term, but you found that in Brother Sylvester, which is what made the situation so different.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the experiences that you had in those past relationships were like, okay, I like this, but I don't like this. And it kind of like, I guess maybe possibly like helped you kind of create this list in your head, maybe. Am I assuming?
No, that's an interest. I saw that question about, the list, and I've never had a list,
I feel you on that because I don't have
that. And then even in hindsight, even now, if I were, in the Lord, I guess back then, I don't think I would have a list because I feel like, in my mind, if somebody loves me and respects me, that's what I want, right? And that was before Christ. But what I would add to that is that they first and foremost love God with everything. Because if a person loves God and they have a relationship with God and their heart's desire is to please God, then they will be what they need to be for me. That's how I feel. Like I don't feel like I need my prerequisite is that they be saved, they love God.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And God knows, and if I'm in alignment, right? And if I love God and I'm in a relationship with God and I'm serving God, then God knows the desires of my heart. He knows what I need. He knows what I don't need and what I can't handle, right? So I don't feel like the Bible says the Lord, he won't put more on you than you're able to bear. And he gives us what we need. So I feel like, if we put our trust and faith in him. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a list, but I feel like sometimes we can make these lists and we, it's like, where's God in that list? Like where's he, because he knows us better than we know ourselves. And he knows where what direction he's taking us in. And therefore, if it's comes time for us to partner up with someone, that person has to be someone that God has designed for us because we have a mission now together that we're supposed to fulfill.
Come on, because you saying the same things that I be saying. That was confirmation right there. Okay.
But also I would add to that too. like we were 17 when
Mhm.
we met. And so when you're 17 and you're not being raised in the church, you're not really thinking about marriage.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying? I would assume that a person who's been raised in the church may be thinking about marriage a lot earlier,
Mhm.
because there are certain things they would like to experience that they wouldn't want to, they know what the Bible says, what the word says. So they're thinking, okay, I'm not going to wait till I'm 30 to get married. I'm
Mhm.
gonna get married much sooner. So they're thinking about it much sooner.
Mhm.
So I can also see the side for having a list, writing a vision,
Yeah.
making a plan. You know what I'm saying? I can definitely see both sides of it. But I know when I met my wife, when I met Melissa, I wasn't even really thinking about a relationship,
Mhm.
because I'm a senior in high school. I'm on my way to college. I don't have a girlfriend. I'm about to be running parties in Baton Rouge, tearing it up. Not what turning up wasn't a term back
Right.
then,
Yeah.
but I
But
was
that's
gonna
what it
be
was.
bigger than bouncing or something. You know,
Right.
beanie weenie or something. I'm gonna be doing something, you know. But God had other plans.
Yes, Lord.
And so the thing was, I had a young lady who I went to like the winter formal with,
Mhm.
and we had a little pack. We said, okay, well, listen, look, if you don't get nobody to go to prom, and I don't get nobody, we going together. It was like, okay, cool. But like when I met Melissa, I think I told her maybe the first day we got on the phone, I said, hey, yeah, I got somebody for prom, because you just know. You just know, even at that time, we just, it was just something different and something unique. And it was something I knew, this ain't something that comes around every day.
Yeah.
She has very special qualities that you don't find all the time.
Wow. Wow. This is
Yes. And to Sylvester's point too, I mentioned I was, going on dates with someone, but I too was like, man, I'm about to be at LSU. And at that point, I had kind of lost faith in dudes. I was like, I ain't worried about it. I'm just don't even worry about guys. Just I'm about to focus on school, but I'm also gonna have fun. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna be serious with nobody. That was my mindset as well. So God was like, nah.
And what was funny, and I don't know, I feel like we kind of stand in one area too long, but I will say this: when we met and we asked, "What college you going to?" When she said LSU and I said LSU, was like, wow. We just met, went to this library for the first time. We're about to leave New Orleans and we're both going to the same school.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah.
Talk about ordained.
Yes.
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 Um,
And we'll progress more into it, but
mhm.
we could see the hand of God on our entire relationship from
Yeah.
start to finish. Yeah.
So let me ask this. How do you think, I guess for your experience together as a couple, dating before Christ, each other, and dating each other after Christ, like, did you experience that?
Yes. Yes. So we gonna keep it all
So
up.
yeah, so before Christ,
Be
so
as transparent as you want.
yeah, so before Christ, it's and like for me, I I was giving parties, right?
Mhm.
And even though I was out there giving parties, I start feeling convicted. Now I was going to my family's church, and I would have to, I ain't gonna say beg and plead to go to church with my friend who was witnessing to me, but it wasn't that easy. It's like, no, you my son, you go to my church. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But I start feeling like, man, I start feeling a little convicted about it, about making my money that way. And my prayer was, Lord, don't let none of these kids die going home, getting into a fight. Because you're in New Orleans, you what ward you from, they scrapping for nothing. So it's like it was around me, right? But I still was like, but I don't really know if I'm really ready to make that commitment. But before we actually got serious about God together, we were just dating, doing stuff that everybody else do, right? We we had some moments where we fell. And the thing that we think about is this: it's like, okay, when we fell, we didn't know we was falling.
Right, because that was
before
Christ.
so we
Right.
when you falling, but when we think about it, it's like, man, that was a 6-month period of time, about 6 months. And it's like, okay, so why in the world did that even happen? Because when the Lord is drawing you in, you just can't keep doing things that you want to do.
Right.
Like when the Lord is like, we would come to church and the conviction would be so strong.
True.
You didn't want to do stuff that you knew was going to make you feel that convicted. You wanted to come to service. You wanted to enjoy the service, right? You didn't want to just feel like, man, I messed up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, nah, it ain't even worth it. It ain't even worth the conviction. I want to be in church and experience the love of God. And it wasn't condemnation, but it was some strong conviction.
Right.
And I thank God for that. Because sometimes I think, man, I wonder, like, wow, the Lord really convicted us to the point to where it's like, you know what, it ain't worth it. And we stopped and we dated just as friends for 3 more years, like just dating.
Yep. He was my brother in the Lord. I was his sister in the Lord.
Just dated. Like
date.
And of course we're dating. So it's like there's a romantic relationship, but it never went off into that area for all those years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sorry. Okay, let me make sure that I understand, because you said dating as friends. So were you guys like officially together, like boyfriend and girlfriend?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we were
just remove like certain aspects of the relationship away to like avoid falling.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay,
but the part about it though that I thank the Lord for, we both were each other's first, even with that. So it's like, man, we could have just kept our testimony, and been walking down the aisle together. but I think that there's that part I appreciate. Because I know y'all kind of touched on a little bit, but there is such a thing as soul ties, and things like that when you become intimate with people. So I'm very thankful that we only know each other, right? And we didn't have to deal with that aspect of a relationship. But it was all about, making up in our mind, and we made a decision. We were like, we want to be saved first and foremost. And we wanted the Lord to bless our relationship and to bless our marriage, because we knew we were going to get married. But again, we were very young because we met, at 17. So it was like, okay, Lord, first and foremost, we have to honor you in our relationship. And so we began to just really get busy about doing the Lord's business, getting around, being in groups. We had a close group of friends. We would all hang out and fellowship together, just go by the house, eat. We would do Bible studies on campus. We're just busy doing the work for the Lord. And we knew that if we do X, Y, and Z, if we open this door, this is what it's going to lead to. We did not trust our flesh. And I think that's so important. I think people who are trying to, do right, they put too much confidence in their flesh. But, the scripture tells us in the flesh dwelleth no good thing, not a thing. And so, not putting that confidence in our flesh and really putting all of our trust and confidence in God, that if we commit to him, he's going to keep us. And he did, he kept us. So that was the after Christ, I guess, courtship for 3 years.
And having good people in your life.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We have a sister, I can name a bunch, but the closest one to us is First Lady Thais Williams. She wasn't dating nobody, married at that time, but she just took us in, and that was like an accountability big sister.
Yes.
So having the right people in your life, especially if you're dating in God, you want to have people who will tell you, you need to go home, right? Versus somebody say, hey man, yeah, hey, we all human. Like, I don't want nobody telling me that. You know what I'm saying? We are all human, but I want somebody to tell me something to keep me from falling, you know,
Yes.
versus trying to help me feel comfortable after I fall, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what I heard is just the ability to have a self-awareness and really knowing yourself, not just individually, but like as a couple. You know what I mean? So to be able to know, like, okay, I know I'm struggling in my flesh, and then I know I'm struggling in my flesh. So together we can work on this thing, to be able to not cause each other to fall. I think is very, very important, because a lot of times, people will get into relationships and they don't, one, they don't consider the other person sometimes, and two, they're not willing to look at, I guess, the negative sides of themselves sometimes.
Mhm.
And be able to work on those things. Like, you can't come in and like you have all this baggage and you have all these things that you're carrying, and then you just expect to put that on your partner. Like, that's an unfair thing to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And being equally yoked helps. And a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
times, when we say that, a lot of times we can think, okay, yeah, they go to the same church as me. No, because we can be at the same church, but if we're not equal in our thoughts about certain things, if we're not equal in our vision, then we're still unequally yoked. We have the same, we believe one God, baptism, Jesus' name, we believe all that, but now, are we compatible?
Mm.
Because you got that in common, a foundation, I don't mean you can get married.
Right.
It's more than that,
Absolutely. And I will also add that another thing that really helped us was having people that we were mentoring and teaching. So when you have someone that is looking up to you, and Bishop Allman used to always say, everybody needs a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. So your Paul, that's the person that's mentoring you. That's the person that can be like, look, you need to get your stuff together. And they do it in love, but that's the one that holds you accountable. And then your Barnabas, that's your friend, right? That's somebody on your level, iron sharpening iron. Y'all there for each other, helping each other. You can confide in that person. And then you have your Timothy. That's the person that you are mentoring. And he would always say, a lot of times it's those Timothys that keep you saved. It keeps you, really focused on what you need to be focused on. Because the days when I wanted to, give in to my flesh, I had to think about people who I was witnessing to, people I'm teaching Bible studies to. How can I go and face them knowing that, I'm not living what I'm teaching? And so that kept me.
That's really good.
Powerful, powerful stuff already. We haven't even got to the meat of it yet. See, this is what I love. Okay. So it sounded like, really, from the gist of what I'm getting, that y'all two pretty much decided early on that y'all were it for each other. Like, there was there any doubt? Let me
No.
ask that question.
No, I didn't have any doubt. And then, like, the Lord, he would bring like elders around us who would people who we really looked up to, and they would say stuff, and it was like the Lord saying, like the Lord speaking through them, stuff about marriage. Man, y'all look like y'all. I mean, I see wedding bells and all that stuff.
Right.
One time we were over at Melissa's dorm, and Bishop Allman called, and when he called, he was asking us something about church, of if we needed a ride to church the next day or whatever. I think it was something like that. And then he asked about me. And she said, "Oh yeah, he's here." And he said, "So when are y'all getting married?" And we like, "Oh, I don't know." Because Bishop Allman, he wasn't the one who was quick to marry people.
Mm-mm.
He would always say, "My job is to break you up."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what he would say. "My job is to break you up." So whenever you have your marital counseling classes, I'm not sure if they went through that in the other
They
call,
talked a little bit about it.
but his goal was to break you up. If I can break you up, if I can make you storm out, you mad at each other, then good. Y'all shouldn't be together. But he was asking us when were we going to get married? I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I was expecting for him to start trying to break us up, but you know, he knew that we were he knew the Lord spoke to him, and when he said that, I think that's when we start thinking, man,
We need to,
like, should we really entertain that thought this young?
right.
Because when I got married, I was 20.
And I had just turned 21.
And so like when I'm at that age, I feel like I'm grown, you know, and I look at 20-year-olds today and I'm like, man, I wish you would talk about getting married at 20, you know, but it's kind of, you know, hypocritical of me, but it's like, wow. Yeah, we got married at a young age, but mentally we were already mature. Mentally, I wasn't trying to run a club and wasn't trying to. I had seen what I wanted to see. I mean, I spent a lot. I'm sorry to say this, but I spent time in the clubs when I was really, really young. I did that stuff. You know, I wanted a clean life, and I was already settled. So,
Yep.
Okay.
I agree. I knew, you know, to answer that question. I knew. Like he mentioned, is like you just know when you know,
That's
you
right.
know, it's just like I don't know. And I think it was mentioned on the call too. And when I heard, I was like, that's exactly how I feel. Bishop would also say, you know, is who you can't live without, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew. It's like he's the person who I wanted to spend time with. But most importantly, I think for me, he was my friend. He's my friend, you know, because we dated and courted. I guess I'm gonna use the word courted because dating means something totally different these days. But because we courted for 3 years as friends, I feel like that really solidified the foundation of our relationship, because you know that and the way in which we got to know each other and build that friendship. So on days when, and we'll probably get into it, when I'm mad with the husband Sylvester, because you know it ain't always, every day ain't always like, yeah, you know, some days I get on his nerves, some days he gets on my nerves. But my friend Sylvester will be mad and be like, what you want to do? You know, like, come on, what you want? You want to watch a movie? You want to do something? Like, ain't nothing happened, you know? Because he's my friend, I'm his friend. He's my best friend. I'm his best friend, right? So that's important.
Okay. So I guess because it seems like you said, y'all knew pretty soon that y'all were the one for each other, and y'all were being encouraged by elders and by friends and by people who were looking out for y'all. So how soon did it go from courtship to, all right, we getting married?
So we met March the 19th. We started dating on March the 31st
of 1996.
of 1996. And I want to say it's probably like March of 98.
Yeah.
Was it March of 98?
About 98.
I think March of 98. We made it. We got engaged. And we got married
July of 1999.
Okay. So
now we had people who were you know, at the church and in our fellowship encouraging us. We didn't have a whole lot of support from family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to pay for the wedding ourselves. Because my family in particular, they wasn't having it. I'm gonna just be, you know, they were like, you about to do what? Because I'm in school still, right?
Yeah.
And she was the valedictorian of her high school.
Oh.
And her high school was like, it was like, I would say at that time, it was like Baton Rouge High. So she was the valedictorian of her high school. And her grandmother.
You gotta remember, we're not Baton Rouge natives. So what does that mean?
So
it was a magnet school.
It's a magnet.
It was like
school.
the number 2 school in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay, so like Poly for us, John.
Okay, so like
okay.
I
mean, it's like a right. And so and her grandmother raised her. And so when you go tell your grandmother you're getting serious with this little boy, that's what a grandmother saw me as a little boy. And actually I was. But it didn't go over. It didn't go over well at all.
Right.
Because the thought process was you go to school, you get your education, you graduate, you work, you build your house or you buy your house, and then if some little dude come along, okay, but you already established. You get all of that stuff first. And then I come up there at 17, 18, 19, and she's serious about me. And now she's serious about the Lord. And it's like, who is this guy got you in this Lord stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're in the cult.
Like what you don't want to do this no more. You don't want to go here no more. Like, you know, so I became the bad guy actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the Lord still blessed, you know, like we prayed, was like, as far as the timing, right? We knew we were supposed to get married, but we did really seek God and ask for him to lead us in terms of whether or not this was a good time, right? And he confirmed. We actually put some fleeces before the Lord, and then for the sake of time, I'm not gonna go into details, but they were very specific things that we asked God to do to confirm that this was the right timing, and he confirmed every last thing. And we were able to, as broke students, you know, we have much of nothing. We were able to, you know, do our wedding. I want to say it was under $1,500 for that wedding.
And
the Lord just blessed, you know, he blessed, and we didn't really have to, go into debt or anything like that to have the wedding. Now, my family did come, though. I will say that. They did attend and kind of try to come around at the end, but we didn't have a lot of support. And his family was more supportive.
Yeah, they were more supportive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you already slipped kind of into my next question. I was going to ask about, you know, the introduction to each other's family and all of that good stuff. So how did those things go? I mean, I know you said family wasn't really supportive as much on your side, Melissa, but how did the introduction go at least?
Well, I will say when the first time I went to Melissa's house, I couldn't find the house. And so I'm going all around the street, you know, up and down looking for the house. I didn't have a cell phone, so I had to go inside of a nightclub, this little juke joint, and call them from the nightclub to try to get directions to the house. And then when I get there, it's kind of late, right? And her grandmother is like, "Who is this little boy coming to the house this time of night?" It wasn't like really late. It's probably about 8:45.
But it was just dark.
It was dark, but it's like, and you know, so that was our introduction. This little guy is in my house and is late. Why is he here? You know.
Well, my dad was cool.
The dad was cool. Dad was real cool. He always was cool. He's still cool. You know, he was here the other day. I mean, and you know, people came around. Melissa had an auntie, her godmother. She wrote her a long essay of why it was a horrible mistake to get married at the age of 20, 21.
Ooh,
and believe it or not, that lady ended up blessing us the most financially for that wedding.
Amen.
And even after the wedding.
Yes.
Even after the wedding.
Yep. She sure did. And our kids, you know.
Yes.
Yep. And on the other hand, his mom was I'll say I have the best mother-in-law ever. Like, and father-in-law too, but you know, like I gotta put mother-in-law on the map. She was just always so welcoming, you know, and she treats me like a daughter, you know. And y'all kind of, you know, I ain't gonna get into my testimony, but that does a lot for me to have her as a mother figure. But at the same time, what I love about her is that she lets us have our marriage, right? She's not, you know, the mother-in-law. And that's another thing, you know, you want your parents and stuff there, your family there for support, but they don't need to be in your business in terms of that, because you have an argument, you go tell your parents about it or whatever, Next thing you know, y'all done made up, but they looking at your spouse side-eyed,
Right.
They don't forget those types of things. So if at all possible, find somebody else, to be able to really go to, because it's important to have people you can trust, but everybody don't need to be in your business. And that's a whole word in itself. And I think that's really helped us in our marriage, that we have those boundaries that we've established, and we stuck to that.
Okay. Let's see. What's a good next question? What's a good segue? Okay. So in the situation when like yours, where the support was, flip floppy, how do you navigate that, and how do you advise people to navigate a situation like that when family is not necessarily as supportive of the situation as you would like?
So the first thing is, when you, and this is what we would always say, it doesn't matter what they say. What matters is what God says. And so we knew that this was of God, right? I had an uncle. My uncle, he when he met my wife, he said, nah, that ain't the one. Now he's a minister, and he says he's prophetic too. And he said, I said, what you mean ain't the one? He said, nah. He said, I don't feel that in my spirit. That ain't the one. I said, let me ask you a question. And I'm a young kid at this time still, right? I said, did you pray on that? Ooh. Did you fast on that? Because I've been praying and fasting, and I know this is the one. So what makes you think she's not the one? And he was like, well, I'm just. He started laughing, right? He backed up. But that same uncle told that to his sons about women they were with, and they ended up going in separate directions, But so people will try you, but when you're standing on the foundation of God, then it doesn't matter who says what. This is of God. So that was our thing. People was saying whatever they wanted to say, have family meetings about us and all that stuff, but we knew, hey, this is what God wants, and this is what we're gonna do.
23 years later.
Yeah.
Word of God.
We still here. To God be the glory.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you navigated, because at the same time we navigated it with respect. We respectfully, I didn't allow, as best as possible, my family to disrespect Sylvester, like in person, to his face. Now they might have said stuff, and I've had to check. There was a time period where I had to check my grandmother respectfully for comments, different things like that. That was a difficult thing to navigate. And there was a season when we didn't even go over there. And I had to explain to I love you. I will always love you, but there's no justification for that. Sylvester is a great guy, never disrespected her. As a matter of fact, did a lot for her, if she needed help with anything. So it was and I think a part of that, looking back on it, was more spiritual than anything. And that's a whole nother podcast. We got to understand the spirit that behind that people are operating with. And recognize that it's not necessarily them, but oftentimes the enemy will use people to cause strife, to cause chaos. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so when we recognize the spirit that was in play, we're able to better pray against those things, but then also not put ourselves in that situation to have to deal with that.
Right.
So I heard Brother Sylvester mention praying and fasting, and that's how he knew, he was in the right place and in the right relationship. So did you both have a spouse prayer? Because I've heard that in society everybody keeps talking about specifically Sierra prayed for Russell Wilson or whatever, and people kind of jumped on that a lot. So I guess, what was your spouse prayer, if you had one before you guys met, and what was kind of the one during your relationship?
I didn't have I didn't pray.
Fair. Fair.
Right. And amen.
So I didn't have a spouse prayer. And I mean I can honestly, I don't think I had one like after. I mean, I prayed for you, but
right. What's a defined spouse prayer? That's what maybe give me a little
I
clarity
know
on that.
they posted it at some point. I'm not entirely sure. But the idea behind it was, I guess, because at least what's in society, she like obviously went through like bad relationships before, so I guess she got to the point where she was like she wants something more real. So she, had this prayer that she prayed to God for her spouse, whoever that person may be.
Ah, got you.
Got you.
Yeah, I never had that either.
I didn't. And we're blessed that we met each other so young.
Yeah.
Now I think if we wouldn't have met when we met, and we would have had bumps and bruises,
I've been praying too, Lord Jesus.
But God brought us together when He did, and before we even knew what we wanted. So He knew what we needed before we even knew we needed it.
Yes. And I often tell people too, he brought us together, and like I can't say I've had trauma and heartache, and some people just have a whole bunch of bad relationships. I thankfully never experienced that. I never experienced that type of pain and hurt, even with the little breakups. I mean, it was young, it wasn't anything serious. And then I didn't attach myself in that way to people too. And so I feel like, I thank God. And again, He knows what you can handle, because I don't think I can handle that, y'all. I'm just gonna be real. And so he knew that. And I feel like He gave me a phenomenal spouse, a good guy. Like Sylvester has never hurt me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't, I'm just blessed. So I think I said all that to say that's probably why I didn't pray a, specific spouse prayer. Because again, I just want somebody to love and respect me. Right. And it just kind of happened. And so when we even got to the point to whereas we were saying we were going to be together, he was my spouse in my eyes. Right. I knew that's who I was going to marry. So I didn't necessarily have to pray that prayer. It was just a matter of, is this when we're supposed to get married? That was the prayer. Like, I know we're supposed to get married, but is this the right timing? Because God had already confirmed, that we were supposed to be together.
Yeah.
Right. So y'all already touched on this a little earlier, but I wanted to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty about being intentional in the process of like that courtship to marriage, and even in the marriage, being intentional while you're married. So can y'all talk about that a little bit?
Let's see. So I think being intentional, we were really big on, again, because in our courtship after Christ, we only had the friendship. We were very intentional about having conversations, like, and then being at school, like, I cared about him. I cared about, how he was feeling, how his day went. And I know one of the calls that people were saying, as far as like people have different thoughts on cooking and doing stuff for people, I cooked for him. I did, because we were both in school, and I had my little refrigerator in the dorm. And we had our little common area, we had a kitchen and a little study area and stuff. I got up in that kitchen and I would cook, and we would eat, and all of that. So I think there was some intentionality in that, because those were the times where we really got to know each other. We got to bond. We were intentional about really, really intentional about our relationship with God. And I think as a result of that, that spilled over into, that brought us closer together, because first and foremost, we both wanted to grow in the Lord, and we held each other accountable.
It's like the love triangle. Y'all heard of that before? The love triangle?
No.
I want to say yes.
So it's like you have a triangle,
A
a pyramid shape, right? And you have God at the top, and then you have your significant other, fiance or spouse on the left side, and the other one is on the right side. Well, the closer y'all get to God, the closer y'all get together.
Ooh,
Okay,
Ooh,
okay,
that's good.
okay.
That's good.
That's
I see Jonathan, you drawing it out. I already see.
Yeah.
And so, I will say this, the Lord really blessed us early on in our courtship, and our marriage. It was easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't really have those setbacks a lot of people had. I mean, we really didn't.
Mhm.
And honestly, because it was so easy, I would say it was effortlessly. We just kind of lived life and just,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? We just walked through it. Now, it didn't always stay that way, but early on, I mean, I would say we got kind of spoiled because, like, man, like one person, this was years ago, somebody asked one of our friends at church, like, man, are they really that happy or are they just fronting? It's like, no, they really like this. You know what I'm saying? And we've had moments where I always tell people, look, this ain't the Cosby Show. Like, you got real life you deal with,
Right.
but when we first got together, it was just like the Lord just made our way easy. And I guess because we really wanted to honor him, you know what I'm saying? And we really said, okay, we're going to abstain. We're going to live for you. He really rewarded that.
Yep. He did. He really did.
And intentional in a marriage, like now at this stage, that's more of just really listening to each other. Because one of the things Bishop Allman said when we were dating years ago, he said, the woman you're marrying right now is not the woman you're going to be with 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, Lord.
That woman's going to probably change every 10 years. And you have to understand when she's changing, and when she's, when her likes are changing. The same woman I married in 99 is not the same woman sitting next to me right now.
Right.
She's totally different. And so he said, you got to learn how to love the new person all over. Right. And that was really good because I can actually see that.
Yes.
The stuff that my wife liked back then is like, I don't know what I was tripping on. I don't like that. It's like, what? It's totally changed. So you gotta be in tune with that to know, okay, now we just gotta go with the flow, And I heard somebody say, people talk about having 100 different women, but a smart person would just learn how to love one woman 100 different ways. And it's like when you have I heard that before. Yeah, they me. But like, even if you're in a long relationship, that person is going to give you an opportunity to love somebody totally different because they change,
That's true.
Another thing that we heard early on is that the stuff that they do that you love when you get married, those things sometimes they dwindle. And the stuff that kind of irritates you some, they increase, right? And so what you do is when you think about, okay, if the stuff I don't like, if that should increase, can I still love this person? Right? And just going into it knowing, hey, things are going to change, right?
Right.
We're not going to always look the same, be the same, sound the same, whatever. And so now you go beyond the looks and you're into the commitment. So intentional with the commitment. So even when the lovey-dovey feeling is not there, you're committed.
Mhm.
Right? And through the commitment, you can conquer anything.
Okay. Through the commitment, you can conquer anything. That's beautiful. Okay. What's the easiest and what's the hardest part of marriage?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
So I would say for me, the easiest part of marriage is just showing up for me. Like every day, getting up, every day I come home, it's easy. Sylvester's a very easy person to love. Like, he's easy to get along with, 98% of the time. We bump heads on things, but you know, all in all, it is nothing major stuff, but that's what's easy for me, just showing up and being in the relationship. And the hardest thing, because I thought about it, and what I immediately thought of was, for me, the hardest part is how marriage forces me to self-reflect, and how marriage makes me look at myself. I think oftentimes in a relationship, we would like, or like, you know, when we were younger in our marriage, you see those things that you kind of don't like. I don't know, you trying to change them. I don't like this. I wish they would do this. And we focus on how we want to change our spouse, when really and truly the only person we can change is ourselves. And so for me, that's the most difficult part of marriage, is when I realize that just like there are things that I may want him to improve in, there are things that I need to improve in, right? To be my best self. And so that's difficult, because a lot of times we don't like to do things that are uncomfortable, or I don't necessarily like to compromise, right? All the time. And so that's a challenge for me that I have to work on, you know, that self-reflection. Like, how can I, you know, bring a whole person to the table, right? How can I deal with what I need to deal with within myself to love Sylvester in the way that he deserves to be loved, and vice versa.
Okay. Okay. How do you keep marriage fun?
I guess the first thing is, for us, it goes back to the friendship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so a lot of times we together, we just laughing. You know, we'll just lay on the floor, and we're just laughing about people. If they could be like a little fly on the water, like, man, they're laughing about some stupid, goofy stuff. But that's how we are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I like to joke a lot.
You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling y'all. Some people think he's so serious. Man, look, if y'all only knew.
I like to prank joke and all that stuff. But so the friendship, you know, so we keep it fun with the friendship. And I know that you know, we'll go hang out, and we hang out. We may not even be walking holding hands, but because she's my friend, just being in her presence is fun.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I would rather be in Baton Rouge with my friend than to be in Paris or on a vacation without her. You know what I mean? So it's just that that connection that we have.
Mm-hmm.
The fun part to us, though, the fun part is like, it's easy.
Yeah.
We don't try to make it fun.
Right. It's not, it's just, I don't know, because we all, another thing too is like, life is too short.
Yeah.
You know, and we've just from day one, I think, purpose, like, we're not going to bed angry, we're gonna get it right. You know, like, if we have somebody to talk about, we're gonna talk about it. And I feel like if we only have a finite amount of time on this earth, we might as well make it fun, right? Mm-hmm. This is the person who we're gonna be together till death do us part, which we always say, Lord, just take us. But like, I don't even want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. I don't think I can handle that. But just, you know, really, we're just fun natured people, I guess. So it just spills over into our marriage. Like, it doesn't take much. We could literally be chilling, watching a movie, or literally there's been days we just sit in the car and just talk. We sitting in the driveway just talking, laughing, you know. Like he said, cracking joke. He's forever doing stuff to make me smile, make me laugh, you know.
Even when I should be serious, she said, this is a serious moment.
Right. But we're gonna keep it lighthearted, you know. And dating, dating, even when you're married, is important, especially after you have children. And that's another thing that some people disagree on. But when you have children, your relationship with your spouse comes first. Because, and a lot of people put their kids first, and that's just out of order. Your relationship with God, then your relationship with your spouse, then your kids. Because if the relationship with your spouse is dysfunctional and it's not intact, that's not helping your kids.
Yeah.
Not helping your children. And so we were very intentional about making sure that our children saw parents that loved each other, that they always be like, ew, we show affection in front of them. But at the same time, I catch, my daughter, I kind of catch out the corner of my eye. She's smiling, she likes seeing that, even though she's like, ew. I think that's important. They see us date now, especially now that they're older. We can leave them and they can just stay at home. I'm like, what? We living our best life. Okay.
For the longest we did, because we didn't do it like we're real picky when it comes to who we have with our kids.
Watching.
So for a long time, we really didn't do a whole lot of dating without them, because they'll just be with us. So we'll be all the family dates, unless they went to New Orleans with my mom and stayed for a few days or whatever. But that's something I would say, if I can do that all over again, I would be more intentional with having those moments, just her and I. Now we have them now because they're older, and we can leave them. But before then, it was like, well, we ain't about to leave them with nobody, so they're just gonna be over here with us.
Yeah. But I will say, even with that, in those moments, we still had a long time in the house. Like when they go to sleep or whatever, they go to their room.
Absolutely.
Like we did dates and spent that a long time. It just looked differently, right? So we just set up stuff, y'all know, we grown folk, but we do stuff in the house, had that quiet time together.
So that's a perfect way to move into, since you talked about, dating each other while having kids. What would you advise for like single parents going through this courtship situation? Like, I know y'all were blessed to not have to deal with that situation, but what advice would you have?
Jesus,
man.
So I would say that the first thing is, you have to be very, very prayerful. And then pray some more. And do not bring people around your kids until you know that this is somebody I'm dating with the intent to marry.
That's
right. That's the don't bring. No, this your Uncle Bobby, this your Uncle Jody, this your Uncle. No. You never saw him at the family reunion, but this your uncle. Nah. So don't bring anybody around your child until you feel like this is the person. I think God is set me up to be with for the rest of my life. That's so important.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then you want to make sure that it becomes very important that y'all are equally yoked in a lot of different areas, not just spiritually, because this person's going to help you raise your child.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And hating to go in a negative way, but I was talking to a guy who he told me that he's over the sex trafficking in Baton Rouge. And he said, Sylvester, he said, you wouldn't believe it, but most times when young ladies are in that ring, they're put in that ring by stepdads.
That is so true. So true.
And so you got to make sure that the person you have coming around not looking at your child too.
Right.
And being a wolf in sheep clothing. And everything they speaking in tongues ain't speaking of the Lord. You know what I mean? And so it's a whole different level when you have a child involved. And then like that person, that child, depending on their age, they could possibly get attached to this person.
Yeah.
And if y'all just kind of dating and then, you checking his DMs and somebody DM'd him and y'all break up, now that child is being ripped from this person. It's not just y'all breaking up, but the child is breaking up too with somebody they saw as a father figure. So being very prayerful, and I would say hopefully the person that's single has someone in their life who they can bring this person in front of. See, if I'm single, I'm thinking, okay, I want to bring this person around some people. As soon as they leave, hey, sister, hey, brother, what you felt, what you thought, I want them to tell, hey, look, I feel a good spirit from this person, or I don't know, something ain't right, because if I'm trying to do life with this person, right, I want to get them around some people that's saved, that's full of the Holy Ghost,
right,
that can discern, help me, because I don't want to just be thinking about, man, look at the shape. My mind gone because I'm thinking about the shape. I want somebody to be looking from a different angle, right, as well. So yeah, it's a whole different animal when you got children involved.
Yes, and it works both ways. Now, I know we talking mainly like single parent mothers, but single parent fathers too.
Yeah,
because you could have stepmomzilla, and that's just saying.
Yeah.
You have a whole little Cinderella situation.
Exactly.
And that's also the thing too. Like we would have to have an agreement. Like, listen, we would never say the word step.
Right.
True.
And also if I'm coming in, if the woman has a guy coming in, she should say, okay, listen, if you're stepping in as dad, then you treat them as your child and you discipline them. Sometimes they don't want him to say anything. So you want him to act as dad, but you don't want him to discipline his dad. That ain't, that's not a lot. Yeah, that's not fair. You can't put the muzzle on him and just let him be a checkbook or be whatever a father figure, but let him be able to speak into that child's life.
Right.
And correct.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, too, if the Lord has blessed you, if you're a single mom and the Lord has blessed you with a spouse, and you just say you have a male child, then that, hopefully you chose somebody that could teach your child how to be a man.
Yeah.
Because the mama can't do that. And vice versa. If you're a guy and you have a daughter, right? You can't teach her how to be a woman. And so if you've been blessed with a person, that can fulfill that role, let them do that.
The prayer would be, Lord, is this the person for us?
Yes.
When you have kids, not just me.
That's good right there.
That is
very good. Yeah.
Look, as we shared all that, not even in that role. So single parents, y'all might have a different perspective. We just saying, we're just talking from observation, but it's definitely some things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important because sometimes, like, sometimes when you're in the situation, it's hard for you to have these different perspectives. So it's good to be able to hear, from others who can speak from the outside, even though they may not have experienced it personally, but they can empathize and understand what you're going through. But one of our last questions that I want to talk about, because I've heard this a lot growing up, especially, for people who aren't Christian. I know, we have a variety of different listeners, and they may be in different parts of their journey. So for people who have this mentality, that marriage is just a piece of paper, and you have people who, want to have these common law marriages, which is pretty much them living together for however long, or who feel, it's kind of a waste of energy to be married to somebody because there's no benefit to it. How would you speak on that?
I have heard that. I've heard people say it's just a piece of paper, but fundamentally, marriage was the first institution that God established, right? And in society, the way there's a certain way we recognize it, right? And so that piece of paper does mean something. Yeah, you could say, oh, well, we've been together, whatever, technically married. No, you're technically not. You know, if you look at the way, I guess, society defines marriage. And my thing is, if you love that person, if you spending time together with that person, then to me, it's just solidifying a commitment, right? And I would ask, why not? Like, why not go that extra step to get? I mean, you don't even have to do the wedding. I don't know if it's because they feel like they got to spend 20,000, 30. I don't know what weddings cost these days, and they don't want to go through the fanfare of it. Because if that's the case, you don't have to do it.
From what I've heard, I don't think it's the wedding. It's just more so like I personally feel like it's a lack of commitment, because they talk a lot about like the financial piece and having to mix finances, you know, like paying bills, and this person is on your insurance, and it's all of those pieces. I think a lot of times it does stem to the finances of it, and then it's also you know, the steps that they take. So if they've been living with the person for a certain amount of time, it's like, well, we've already been in this, you know, so what's the point of getting married? It's not going to change what we're already doing.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
So, and I've heard that as well. Usually when I hear this, and it's like we have two different audiences, right? So we have one audience that's, they ain't thinking about God. So why do I have to get married? Because I don't see myself in sin. You know what I'm saying? If I don't feel like I'm in sin and I'm doing anything wrong, why should I get married? It makes no sense. Me getting married and getting in front of a judge or a preacher ain't gonna make me love you no more than what I love you right now. Because I'm not doing anything wrong in my eyes by shacking up. And so that person who is feeling this way got to first get to a place where they really see that is wrong, right? And that goes two ways too, because there are some people who don't care nothing about the law, but they want to be married, right?
Yeah.
So that goes two different ways. But for the person who is looking at it as just a piece of paper, well, when the more sexual partners you've had in your life, the easier it is for you to see marriage as just a formality. Right? Because you've been experiencing the gifts of marriage without having a marriage. So why do I need to get married? You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been experiencing all this. What is the point? But you gotta catch people like where they are and why they feel that way, and then find out. For me, just because I'm not just a man, but I'm a man who loves God, right? And so my life and my perspective is rooted by the word of God. So my first thing is, hey, listen, you ain't supposed to be touching that woman if you ain't married. That's the first thing. You know what I'm saying? The first thing is, if you want to be right and get this thing off the list, go ahead on, and if you love the woman, marry the woman. That's just, you know, but some people that won't fly with, because they don't even believe.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So how you tell somebody who don't believe you need to get married? Well, if you don't believe, now this is just me, Christian Call Center. If you don't believe in the word of God, then whether or not you shacking up don't really matter.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's the least of your words.
Right.
You got to come to believe that God is first. And then once the Lord start dealing with your heart, then and you start reading that word, there's like, okay, maybe I should go ahead and marry this person. But also, you got to think of the spirit of this world and the time that we're living in.
Yes.
If we can make the family unit not as powerful, then we can erode the foundation of what God had in store for us and for his people. right? So if you look around, people have a spirit of non-commitment. I don't want to be committed to anything.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? I don't
Not
want to
just
be
marriage.
I don't want
Yeah.
to be committed. Like I want to be free. I want to freelance. I don't want to be tied down. I want to
Mhm.
do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so that's just where we are right now. And so but that's my thought on that.
Yeah. And I also think too that some people they want the perks and the benefits, but they want that exit that out, you know.
Yeah,
They want that exit strategy. Like
that's it.
just in case, you ain't about to take all my money or whatever. But it's like, have you totally given yourself to that person? Do you totally trust that person? That's a trust issue to me.
Yeah,
Like you're with somebody that at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact that you don't trust that person enough to say, I'm going to commit to you in this way. That's what it boils down to. Taking away, of course, the biblical aspect of it, you remove all of that because everybody's at different phases. When you say, I don't want to marry somebody because I don't think it's that serious, or because I ain't trying to tie my finances, or whatever your reason may be, you're basically saying, I don't trust them 100%.
that's very true. That's a completely different perspective that I didn't think about, but that is very true, and that makes a lot of sense. Because for me, I always think about, like when you get into a marriage specifically, and for me, it's like the divorce rate is so high, and
Oh,
people
yeah.
just automatically think like when things get too hard, oh, I can just get a divorce. But for me, it's like, why is that even an option?
Yes.
You know
Correct.
what I mean? Because
Right.
if you went into it with the correct mentality, you shouldn't be so quick to jump to that. Like
Yeah.
there are so many other, well, first of all, there was probably a breakdown somewhere before you even got to the point of thinking of divorce, and that's the part that wasn't addressed. But it's
Yes.
also, why is that the final answer? You know what I mean? Why are we not working that? Why are we not seeking help? Why are we not praying together? Why are we not, going to marriage counseling? Like, why are we not taking these steps to try to fix wherever the breakdown was, to try to solve this commitment that I made to you?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think, a lot of that comes from just what we see. We're so influenced by celebrities and TV shows. And like, if you look at just relationships in general, I don't watch a lot of the stuff, but I've seen quite a few shows. And usually, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, most of these shows, when they depict the relationship, nowadays, you got all kind of relationships, different setups. But in a relationship between a man and a woman, usually the man is always seen as, incompetent. They're doing something wrong. It's not a healthy man,
Correct.
right? It's not a man that's contributing, or something's wrong with him. And then the woman is kind of, fed up and bossing them around or whatever. Or you got the reality TV shows with a whole bunch of drama.
Yeah.
And so this is what society is looking at. This is what they see. And it's nothing but the trick of the enemy. So when that's what's prevalent and that's what's out there, then I feel like that really has an influence on people. And another thing, we got to be careful with some of these movies too, because you got the other opposite of that. You got these beautiful love stories and all of that. And early on in our marriage, I had to be, you watch a movie and everything is just so wonderful. It's so great, just the movie. Oh man, you see how he did that to her? You see how he did that, or you see how she did that? That's TV.
And then you have unrealistic expectations.
Exactly. Very unrealistic expectations. So we got to be careful with what we allow ourselves to watch and what we allow ourselves to be influenced by, because that gives us a false sense of what marriage really is. So
All right. So I guess my final question for y'all is, any last advice you want to give to people who are in any stage in this here courtship that we've been talking about these last couple months?
Don't have a last word. So I think final advice, so at any stage, something that can apply to any stage, would be you know thyself, right? And the best way to know yourself is to really, spend that alone time with God. Know what you're created to do. Like, know what God has for you. Really develop that relationship with God, but then know what you like, because it's hard and then love thyself. Let's talk about that part. Because if you don't love yourself, how can you expect someone to love you? If you don't know what you like, how can you expect someone to, be able to meet some of those needs, right? And so it's so important at whatever stage you're at that you work on yourself. We should always be working on ourselves. We should always be getting better and improving and growing, so that when you come to the table, I know people say, oh, well, marriage, it should be 50-50. No, it should be 100-100. It's each person's bringing their whole self to the marriage and putting in 100%, right? And giving their best and trying to be the best, right? And helping each other. And so that's something I feel that can apply at any stage that you're in, because if you love God and you have a relationship with God, but then and you love yourself, then you're going to respect yourself. And so when you're navigating the courtships and the scouting and all of that, you're gonna be courting with the intent to marry, not just for the sake of just going on dates. You just gonna move differently, right? When that's in place.
I'm a ditto what Melissa said. But also I think in addition to that, it's good to know what you're looking for. But I think we should also know what we bring to the table. Why would this person choose me? Why am I a good catch? You know what I'm saying?
Know your worth.
What is it about me? Because once you know what it is about you that make you a good catch, now you know your worth.
Yeah.
Right. And now you teach people how to treat you. But if you don't feel that you are a great catch, you're going to let them treat you any kind of way. So know your worth, know what you bring to the table, and stay before God. Like, you want God to bless your marriage? Listen, this song says, and they talk about a breakup, I'm guessing. I don't know the whole song, but I know the little hook on it is, if you're under him, you're not getting over him.
Mm.
Now I don't know who sung it.
I don't know, but I'm about to find it. Hold up.
No, don't do that. Don't. I think you need to do it. Yeah. So it's not. But if you're under him, you're not getting over him, right? And so the thing is, what you want to do.
It just pops.
You got the song right, yeah. And they say it throughout the whole song. If you're under him, you're not getting over him. But Pastor Bishop Allman would always say, when you are dating someone, and he said, young ladies, when you're dating someone, he said, that guy, if y'all should decide that this is not what God wants for y'all, he should not be able to say anything about you, but she really loves God.
That's it. I remember that. And y'all should be able to sit on the same, sit on the same pew
with two different spouses, and nobody feel no kind of way, because you kept your relationship and your courtship pure. If you want your marriage to be blessed, you don't want to be up here living like the world, sneaking and sleeping together because, well, we serious about each other and it's just you and me and God know. And if he gave us these feelings for, no, that's the devil. But that's the flesh. That's your flesh. And yes, the Lord made our flesh to react certain ways, but at the right time, right? Yes. So make sure that you're keeping your courtship pure so your marriage can be blessed. That's the first thing. Do not put yourself in situations to where you make it hard on yourself if the courtship does not work out. Now you got somebody else you just attached yourself to spiritually.
Right.
Because if that person that you're courting is not the husband or the wife God designed for you, guess what? You for somebody else.
Yeah.
It just ain't manifest yet.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that, your spouse is somewhere else waiting on you. And so when you go to this person, you want to be as whole as you can be, you know. And even for the people who may have messed up and they done been around a little bit or have had more experiences than they want to talk about. Listen, God is a God can erase that.
Yes, he can.
And start you all over again. So it's not oh man, I done messed up, I'm done. No, not at all.
That's right.
From the time you realize, okay, I'm worth more than this. Now you say from this moment on, when I made up my mind, then that was it.
That's it.
And you have your new testimony all over again.
That's right. Amen.
I like that.
That was really, really good, honestly. And I think this was a really good wrap up to this entire courtship series, honestly, because I think we learned a lot in this one episode. Then you dropped a lot of good nuggets in this episode from all of the ones that we've been through. So on that note, I think this is a good time to stop. Savor these moments. I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for being on here tonight with us. I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the realness that you guys were able to share about your relationships and the advice that you're able to give to our listeners, because I think this was a really, really good conversation that we were able to have. So thank you guys for being here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this courtship series, don't forget, if you are behind, please catch up, because we've had plenty of breaks for you guys to catch up. So please go back, watch the episodes, rewatch the episodes, take notes, share them with friends. Because there were a lot of good things that came out in these episodes that should really help people navigate this area in their life. And I know a lot of people are going through this. And cuffing season, and we're dead in the center of cuffing season according to society. So, this is really important for you guys to deal with right now. But I think that's it for our courtship series. We will be moving on. We are approaching the holidays, so we are going to spend some time talking about families. So get your loved ones, get your kids, get your wives, get your husbands, get your moms, dads, all of them, get them together, sit them around the fire, because we are going to be diving deeper into families the next time you hear us. So thank you guys for being here at the Christian Call Center, where Jesus on the main line, and we are on line 2. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.